Tonight, it is election eve as the midterms await us tomorrow. Voters across the country preparing to cast their ballots Tuesday. Political analysts weighing in on which party will gain control, not just of the House, but the Senate here. Tonight, we are hearing from Cokie Roberts and Director Marist College's Institute for Public Opinion, Lee Merringoff, what they have to say about the elections on the national front and where they believe most voters stand when it comes to the big issues. And the RFL panel dives into some of the local races as well as national ones, what it has to say about New York's race for governor, battle on Capitol Hill, and local congressional races. Plus, Mayor Bill de Blasio and New York's top cop Bill Bratton teaming up to fight off allegations there's a rift between the de Blasio administration and Police Plaza. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks for joining us. And tonight we're going to start with what else? Election 2014. Voters across the country heading to the polls as early as midnight here tonight and all day tomorrow. And the recent numbers suggest here that Republicans, they're going to be happy when it's all said and done. Candidates across the nation hit the road for one final full day of campaigning, and Republicans feel the wave is breaking in their favor.
They would be bitterly disappointed if they didn't take the Senate.
They need to pick up 6 seats to do that, and their chances, they look really solid. 3 states look certain to switch from Democrats to Republicans, and now Arkansas seems to be tipping GOP. That means Republicans could hit their magic number by winning just 2 of the 10 competitive seats now held by Democrats. Kentucky Republican Senator Mitch McConnell is in a tight re-election battle, but if he wins and Republicans pick up 6, he's the new Senate Majority Leader.
We intend to be a responsible governing Republican majority if the American people give us a chance to do that.
In the House, Republicans are expected to expand their majority, but there is one potential bright spot for Democrats on what could be a very bleak day. Republican governors in Florida, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania who swept into office on the Tea Party wave in 2010.
Several of them are actually endangered this year because there's such an anti-incumbent sentiment.
One political analyst says both parties may misread Tuesday's results.
Republicans are going to think it's a vote for them when it's not. They're still viewed negatively by the American public. And I think Democrats are going to try to isolate it since it's only about this election when they still have brand problems.
Several key races may not be decided tomorrow night because of slow vote counting and potential runoff elections. Republicans may not need these states to win the Senate, but if they do, the balance of power here on Capitol Hill may not be known for weeks. Well, today I spoke with political analyst Cokie Roberts, and what she has to say about Democrats distancing themselves from the president, and we also spoke about this malaise out there that voters across America apparently are feeling towards Congress, let alone politics in general. Cokie, you know what's interesting is, this is anecdotal, but the folks I talk to, it's either a combination of disinterest in this year's elections, or maybe even something a little bit worse, where they're a waving of a white flag, that they think that they're so disinvested in the process, regardless of the outcome Tuesday night, nothing really will change. We've seen that play out, haven't we? Turnout's expected to be low, and there's almost a fatigue on the part of the electorate.
I think that's right, and a lot of upset, and that upset could either result in people staying home, as you've indicated, or in their deciding just throw them all out, and that could be a real dynamic of the election, is people just saying, you know, anybody who's in, get them out.
We've seen with, especially a lot of races in our region, candidates, Democratic incumbents particularly, doing everything they can to contort themselves to not align themselves with the president. Do you think, let's first guess here a little bit, that post-mortem Democrats are going to say, you know, maybe we shouldn't have run from the president like he had the plague, whether it be the president or his policies? I mean, you look at the economic numbers this quarter, they're pretty good. Opinions as it relates to the Affordable Care Act, they keep inching up a little bit. But nonetheless, Democrats are doing everything they can to distance themselves from the president. It doesn't seem to be working because they're going to be labeled with him anyway. Do you think they'll regret the strategy?
They might. I think you're right in the sense that, Obama is basically baked in the cake. I mean, people either like him or don't like him, and the Democrats have that to deal with. The Republicans are just using it as a total hammer, and in race after race after race, that's all they're really talking about, is that the Democrat supports the president, the voting record is the same as the president, the president's policies are represented by the Democrat, and of course the president played into that by saying that his policies were all up in this election year. So it's possible that the Democrats should have just said, okay, we've got that problem because of his low approval ratings, but we're going to go with it. I think that particularly in House races, that they tend to do better just talking about local issues, and particularly of their incumbents, what they've done for the district. So that I think that that's probably why they made that decision.
Steve Israel, a Democrat congressman from Long Island, also heads up the DCCC. Right. He recently said, hey, where's the cavalry? Where's the money? Talking about outside money more specifically. Are Democrats getting really outraised with PACs and some of the dark money, and will that really impact tomorrow night?
Probably not. The fact is there's so much money awash in this campaign that it starts to cancel itself out. But it's seldom the money that really is the determinant. How many self-financing candidates can you and I mention over the years who've just spent millions of their own dollars and gotten nowhere? So I think that it becomes an excuse when you have what's likely to be losses in the House of Representatives, particularly in New York, that Steve Israel is talking about. I mean, when you have Congressman Grimm from Staten Island, who is under indictment, looking like he is going to win, Steve Israel has a lot of explaining to do.
Around the table here at night, in the commercial breaks before we start, a lot of Democrat incumbents, when the president's name comes up, they'll grumble some unmentionables I can't say on air. Do you think they're scapegoating him, or do you think, you see it too, I'm sure, in D.C., or do you think that they're right, that the president is shut down a little or let himself be defined by the other side, or just doesn't, as Bill Clinton say, he takes no too easy, or he doesn't like the game of politics? How much of this is just convenient excuses on the part of Democrats, and how much is legitimate beef that their commander-in-chief hasn't been there for them or even for his own policies?
Well, of course, he hasn't been invited to be there for them on the campaign trail. The only Senate candidate who's asked him to campaign for him is Gary Peters in Michigan, where he's way ahead. Yeah, there is grumbling here too that the president is not engaged. But look, let's not let the other side off. The Republican brand is in much worse shape, well, not much worse, but worse shape than the Democratic brand. As Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, has been saying repeatedly, the Republican brand stinks. He actually uses another word, but it's not very polite. So the only reason that Republicans might not have a big sweep on Election Day is because they're not liked either.
Finally, play some parlor game politics here. If it turns out the way people think and the Republicans have a slight majority after probably Wednesday, we've done all the counting in the Senate and they keep their margin, if not growing it in the House, is the president, a perverse way, in a better position because now there's an incentive for the other side to at least try and get some stuff done in advance of 16? And is Hillary Clinton, would you rather be running where the Republicans have a majority in both chambers, the House and Senate? From the president and Hillary's perspective, what do you think they down deep really want on Tuesday?
Well, I think down deep they still want, the president certainly would still prefer a Democratic Senate. It's a rejection of him to have Republicans take the Senate, and he's got to deal with that. But look, it is absolutely true that it's easier to run for president if people are still mad at Washington, saying, well, those guys had control of the entire Congress. The problem this time, Richard, is that the Republicans are so split inside their own party on this question. And so you'd have John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, and Mitch McConnell, the presumptive majority leader of the Senate, saying, okay, let's get some stuff done. We can't just be the party of no. We've got a presidential election coming up in 2016. But you've got a bunch of other Republicans, particularly in the House, saying, hold on, we don't want to do these things. We don't want to compromise. We don't want to have our names on any legislation. We just want to stop things. And that's going to be a real tension inside the party.
Believe it or not, sounds like possible dysfunction in D.C. Cokie Roberts, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Nice to be with you.
All right, let's bring in our panel right now. Jonathan Yedden, Democratic consultant with the Advance Group, former executive director for the Kings County Democratic Party. Dominic Carter, of course, doesn't need an introduction, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman as well, senior political correspondent. All right, Jonathan, tomorrow, when it's said and done, I think one of the earlier speakers said it well. There's going to be misreads on both parts, right? But what do you think we're going to learn from tomorrow? More than just this state did this state did that. What's going to be the overall narrative, you think?
The overall narrative is just going to be more of the same. Incumbents in better than marginal seats are going to win. And all this money that's spent on both sides really is not going to result in much change come the next legislative session. You know, the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on both sides really isn't going to equate to much of anything. And unfortunately, I think the public, one of the reasons why you see fatigue, one of the reasons why you see, you know, people are just throwing their hands up in the air and just don't know what to do, whether or not they're even going to vote, if it matters, what's the point? It's just going to be more of the same, unfortunately, and not much is going to change.
Well, but if Republicans control the Senate, there's going to be talk of a Republican wave. And I'm not so sure that that's necessarily true. I think the map is very favorable to them this year.
That's what it is, right.
But do you think there's a wave coming, or do you think this is just going to be sort of frustration with status quo?
Frustration with status quo, the fact that the deck was automatically stacked against Democrats to begin with. And I think once you get past tomorrow and you look at 2016 right away, come Wednesday, news cycle, not only will be talking about presidential aspirations and Hillary in particular, but you're going to see the map is favorable to Democrats in 2016. They'll retake the Senate, and it'll be a great year in New York and everywhere.
You know, 11 minutes. It took 11 minutes for 2016 to come up tonight.
You know, Dom, I remember when Al Gore was running, and everyone afterwards said, you screwed up. You should have had Bill Clinton run. You know, you should have had him campaign for you in Arkansas and all the rest.
I agree with that.
Do you think there's going to be some Democrats who are saying to themselves on Wednesday and they lose by 6, 7 points? North Carolina jumps out at me as an example. You know what? Yeah, he's not popular, but I should have had him in here. He offered. I should have taken him up on his offer. I should have had him campaign. I shouldn't have ran away from him and his policies because they were going to get labeled with them anyway.
That's a tough call, Richard, because on one hand, unpopular president, that's the common theme throughout the country. On the other hand, no one can energize the Democratic base the way that he can. So do you turn off some voters and do you supplement them more by energizing the base with black voters? And it's all local. You know, we're going to have to look at each individual race. Perhaps that will be the argument in Louisiana in terms of with Senator Landrieu, if she is able to pull out enough black vote to avoid this runoff. We'll talk about that a bit more later on.
Absolutely. You know, Andrew, the one thing I can't get around is, and I said it to Cokie Roberts off the top, but it's true. Either people don't care anymore because they just don't think that it makes a difference anymore in Washington, or, you know, it's just white noise to them. And, you know, that's not healthy. But and I know that this has happened before, but it just seems to be really bad now.
It is really bad, and it's dangerous for the democracy. It's certainly not good for voters who are trying to cast their
especially with so much
ballot.
outside money on the table.
But let's not forget that this is all part of an advanced strategy that was put into place by the Republican Party after the 2008 elections, which is to just be as obstructionist as possible, make people so upset with Washington in general that they get frustrated with the political process. A, that helps their overall argument that government can't do anything right to begin with, and B, the blame then goes to the person ostensibly in charge, in this case President Obama, and it's politically advantageous to them in both of those directions. So you're actually seeing this strategy pay dividends
And
as we
then
go forward.
add in making it harder to vote for certain people on the bottom end of the economic spectrum, and then also more and more dark money where you don't know where it's coming from, outside money with corporate interests and all the rest. Not exactly a home run here for democracy this election season. Okay, we come back though. We will go national to local here. We're going to hear from Dr. Lee Meringoff, director of Marist College's Institute for Public Opinion, about what he has to say about not just that malaise we're talking about, but also New York's governor's race and some other races as well. Stay with us.